Welcome to 9 Minutes or Less with the Smithies, where we share truths on a variety of subjects. And we're here for part 2 of Financial Peace with our pastoral care team members, Brenda and Matt Hayes. Thank you for being back for part 2.
Oh, we appreciate y'all inviting us here.
Us. Okay, the question today is, share with us your personal, it's not so much a question, but just share with us your personal story of financial peace.
Well, I'll start. As I mentioned last week, we had different views on debt and versus leveraging. And I watched as we kept going further and deeper into debt. And the deeper we got into debt, the scareder I got, the more worried I got. And so I began praying. Because I didn't want to be that nagging wife. I'd already tried that and it didn't work too well. But I began praying. I said, God, please don't let us have any more loans. Please don't let us have any more loans. We're never going to be able to dig out of all of this. And then lo and behold, Matt had applied for another small business loan and they turned us down. And I was in the background going, yes, Lord, thank you. But then that created...
So it was your fault.
It was. So then Matt hit the wall, and so I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah. My undergraduate is in finance. I've got a master's in business. And all through the years in school studying this, we kept hearing that leverage or debt is a good thing. You can control large assets for small amounts of money. But I came to find out through Dave Ramsey that there's a big element that was missing from every single class I took, and that's called risk. You know, all this stuff is great if everything happens exactly the way you want it to happen. Well, as people, we tend to paint a rosy picture of what the future is going to be, and we know from experience it rarely happens that way. And when that blip happens, things start falling apart. And that's where I had gotten us. We were in debt over our heads. We were always making a little more money. You know, business was finally starting to grow and do okay, but I just couldn't get ahead of everything. I literally was borrowing money to pay somebody else, and we just weren't getting anywhere. It all came to a head, and we had actually read one of Dave Ramsey's books while we were traveling a couple of years before, but hadn't done a whole lot with it. And some friends of ours invited us to go to a financial peace class, and we said, well, we don't even have the money to go to that. And they said, hey, we got a scholarship for you. You're going. And we went through it, and it was life-changing because Dave took all these complicated concepts that I'd studied for years in college and boiled it down to something really simple. And the hardest part for me was going, how can something that simple be real? How can it be as easy as that? And I say easy, the formula is easy. It takes a real commitment to step into it, but when you do, your life opens up because you're not carrying that debt load around, and you can carry joy instead.
So the very first thing that Dave Ramsey has you do is get $1,000 in savings. He says, have a garage sale.
Sell so much stuff the kids think they're next.
That's one of Dave Ramsey's quotes.
That really
and so we did, and it didn't take us long at all to get that. And that helped with my little security need of knowing that if the such and such breaks, we're not going to be destitute. We can at least get that fixed without going into debt again. As we began teaching the class, one of the girls that we were teaching had an emergency come up after she got her $1,000 savings, and she goes, so what do you do? How do you pay for that? And we told her, that's what you use that $1,000 for. She goes, that was too hard to save. I'm not spending that.
Now. Does Dave teach that from the perspective that it is an emergency fund?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
First thing you do, he has baby steps that you work through, and the first baby step is $1,000 emergency fund. So when the tire suddenly blows out on the car, the washing machine breaks. Not because you want to go out and eat dinner at the local steak restaurant,
Right.
but a true emergency.
Yes.
Then later on, after you've done some other things, you expand that into a much larger emergency fund so that somebody
You have
loses
your-
a job.
3 to 6 months in savings, again, for that security. If the disaster happens, you lose your job or whatever, COVID shut down, whatever,
Right. Yes.
you can survive through that without, going under.
Let me ask this, since you've brought us to this point, you're into the Dave Ramsey, you're beginning to apply the principles. From where you were, the amount of debt, can you share with everybody what was that season like, and how long did it last till you got to the other side?
Surprisingly short.
Yeah.
I kept looking, all right, if I go to work, I can make 50, 60, back then, $70,000 a year. We're not going to get out of debt for 6 years, 7 years. This is not a just go to work and have to put everything I can into that, and it's going to take. I can't do this, and I just felt really helpless. But then Matt started applying the principles of that snowball.
Yeah. I truly am the nerd. I sat down and made a chart, an Excel spreadsheet on all of these numbers and what it was going to take to get things paid off, and it was going to be close to a decade.
Wow.
And that was with not an overly rosy, but an optimistic forecast out there with our business. But
The thing that's amazing that I always tell people when we're doing the class is that when you set your eyes towards the Lord and start doing what you're supposed to do, He blesses you.
Yes.
So we spent just a few months, focused on getting the debt paid off. And somebody came and asked Matt to run for judge, doubled our salary immediately, and boom, we started paying off that debt.
Well, praise God.
And I don't listen to Dave often, but sometimes I'll catch him on the radio if I'm driving around in the evening. And one of the questions he asks people when they're in the studio with him is, how much debt did you have? How long did it take you to pay it off? What was your salary, your household income at the beginning? What was it at the end? And with rare exception, people have large increases in their income beyond what they anticipated. And I think it's that same principle that you're being faithful to God.
Yes.
You are taking care of what He's entrusted you with, and now He's willing to entrust you with even more.
He will bless it.
Yeah.
Yes.
The obedience steps
Yes.
led to greater prosperity
Yes.
and meeting the goal of getting out of debt,
Yeah.
just through those simple acts of obedience.
You know, just to further our story, and we mentioned a little last week, we run our own business, and we were virtually shut down during the entire COVID pandemic. We work with the schools, and so as the schools shut down, we were shut down. We did have our emergency fund of several months worth of money. We never touched that. God just
Amazing.
kept providing along the way.
Yes.
All through.
And
He's
and
good at that.
we tried to remember along the way to focus on God and His provision and be very thankful for what we did have.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Thank you for
Yes.
sharing. I can't wait till
Thank
next
you.
week, because they're going to touch probably one of the most controversial subjects in the church today. And so they're going to walk us through that next week. So until then, have a great rest of the week.